Revealed, 10 spine-chilling true curse stories from haunted small towns that will terrify you. Fog rolled in like a living blanket, smothering the small town of Waverly in a suffocating embrace. The gas station stood in eerie silence, its neon lights flickering like a dying heartbeat. Claire wiped sweat from her brow, exhaustion wrapping around her like the mist outside. She had just finished another grueling night shift. Her fingers trembled as she latched the door behind her, but it wasn't just fatigue tightening her chest, something sinister had begun to brew. Rumors whispered through the town. Disappearances haunted the lives of her neighbors, scattering the tight-knit community like leaves in a storm. What had once felt like home had turned into a place of unease. Claire dismissed the tales about the mental asylum at the edge of town, the clanging doors, unsettling echoes, long-forgotten horrors. Those were just ghost stories, she told herself. But lately, mischief had seeped into her life. Danny, her innocent little boy, would wake in the night, eyes wide with terror, insisting he saw shadows dancing outside their window. She steadied her breath, trying to shake the cold chill creeping into her bones. It was just her imagination, right? But a few nights ago, she found symbols sketched on her neighbor's porch, a twisted star, jagged lines that seemed to writhe, begging for a deeper understanding. She shook her head. Just craziness. But it didn't keep her heart from racing at every little sound. That evening, while stacking chips in the store, voices began to echo from the back. Claire edged closer. A cluster of regulars stood huddled together, their faces pale and tight. Fears spilled from their lips like an overflowing bucket. She didn't come home, no one saw him leave. Dread gnawed at Claire as she listened. Known smiles twisted into curses, their innocence tainted by a collective paranoia suffocating the air. Before we continue, Claire interrupted herself, heart thudding, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With her heart racing, she pieced together clues that led to Anna's house. They had shared secrets for years, but the worry etched across Anna's face was new. Her son had been acting out, violent, screaming of a dark figure with twisted limbs, a specter born from the asylum's haunted past. Claire felt a heavy weight settle in her stomach. This couldn't be happening. Tension spiraled like a storm in the air. The whispers of Waverly turned into dangerous howls, thick and suffocating. She gripped the edge of her counter, refusing to let hope break the tension within her. What if it was all connected, this growing darkness? A scream sliced through the heavy mist, echoing from next door. Adrenaline surged, and Claire bolted outside, heart pounding like a war drum. She glanced at the ominous asylum looming in the distance, its shadows creeping toward her. The fog curled at the corners of her vision, beckoning her deeper. What truth hid beneath? Were the neighbors she once trusted losing their minds? Or perhaps it was something darker, a curse that gnawed at their souls. She paused, dread pooling in her gut, as she stared at the source of the scream. What lay hidden in Waverly? Claire stepped forward, ready to confront not just the fear but the secrets that could consume them all. The night swirled around her, alive and waiting. Claire's heart hammered in her chest as she edged closer to Anna's house. The scream had faded, replaced by an eerie stillness that lingered like an unwelcome guest. Shadows twisted along the walls, their shapes dancing in the dim light. She hesitated, mind racing with the images of her son's wide eyes, the frantic tales that filled the air like smoke. Anna! She called. No response. Just the whisper of the wind, stirring up a chill that crawled down her spine. Feeling a rush of dread, Claire glanced back toward the gas station. The comforting light felt miles away, a distant beacon in a growing darkness. She turned back toward the house, the fog swirling around her like hands reaching out to pull her under. Her legs felt heavy as she approached the porch, but she forced herself to move, each step testing her courage. On the porch, she noticed the symbols again, etched into the wood. They stared back at her, taunting. A surge of anger welled inside her. This wasn't just craziness. It wasn't innocent mishaps. Something was festering beneath the surface like a wound that refused to heal. Pushing open the creaking door, she stepped inside. The air was stale, thick with the scent of fear and neglect. "Anna?" Claire called, voice shaking. "Are you in here?" A soft whimper echoed from the back room. She followed the sound, heart racing, desperately hoping it was Anna. As she got closer, a heavy silence fell, smothering her senses. With each step, the shadows seemed to thicken, pressing against her like an unseen force. She raised her hand to the doorknob, feeling the cold metal burn against her palm. Just as she was about to turn it, a crash shattered the quiet, rattling through the house like a thunderclap. "Danny!" The shout escaped her lips before she had time to think. Her voice crackled against the walls, met with silence, crushing hope beneath its weight. Panic surged. Claire rushed toward the noise, nearly tripping over discarded toys strewn about the floor. Her pulse raced, terror clawing at her throat. The layout of the house twisted in her mind, every turn felt wrong, warped by unseen forces. Finally, Claire reached a doorway, and before her lay a living room in chaos. Furniture was overturned, glass shattered, but no sign of Anna or her son. Just frayed shadows that morphed more grotesquely with each passing moment. Then she heard a low, guttural noise that crept from the corner of the room. It was too quiet to be human, too unnatural to be anything she recognized. A paralyzing cold swept over her, and she realized she wasn't alone. "Who's there?" she demanded, voice firm but shaking. The noise stopped, replaced by an unsettling stillness. With the last glimmer of her courage, Claire stepped forward, breath quickening as she strained to see in the shadows. What she saw sent chills curling through her veins. A twisted shape loomed in the corner, limbs at odd angles, features obscured by darkness. The air thickened with an overwhelming sense of wrongness. From deep within, shadows coiled upwards, whispering secrets too terrible for her mind to grasp. In that moment, she understood this was no mere haunting. This was a curse, and it wrapped around Waverly like a noose, squeezing out the very life of anyone caught in its grasp. "Get away from him!" Claire screamed, adrenaline fueling her desperation. But the figure shifted, a haunting hiss escaping its twisted lips as it slid into the deeper shadows, melding with the gloom. Dread flooded her heart. Where was Danny? What was this entity she had stumbled upon? As if sensing her thoughts, the figure turned back, its eyes a pair of dark voids piercing through her. Claire felt her breath catch, terror clawing at her throat as its gaze spoke of lost souls, wrathful curses, and the relentless darkness closing in. As she stood frozen, the figure's whisper swept through the air, chilling her to the bone. "Join us." With a surge of instinct, Claire broke free from her paralysis. She backed away, feeling the walls pressing in around her. But the way out faded from her view as darkness swirled, and she realized her fight had only just begun. Outside, the fog thickened, writhing like a living creature, inviting her into its depths. And in that moment of horror, Claire knew the curse that plagued Waverly had come for her. She turned to run, the shadows closing in behind her. Yet, as she burst out into the fog, she couldn't shake the feeling that something much worse lay ahead, something waiting in the dark. What terrible revelation awaited her in the deeper shadows of Waverly? Claire sprinted through the mist, the choking fog wrapping around her like twisted vines. Each hurried breath felt shallow, panic clawing at her lungs. The echoes of her scream still bounced through her mind, the shadows from Anna's house snapping at her heels, pursuing with a relentless hunger. "Danny! Where are you?" she gasped, her voice shaky and strained. Desperation propelled her forward. But the thick mist swallowed her words, cloaking them in a silence that felt almost mocking. Dim shapes lurked just beyond her purview, warped outlines that seemed to shift and sway. She stumbled on a cracked pavement, barely catching herself on an old lamppost. It flickered feebly, casting a dim halo around her. The edge of light felt fragile, like a last hope that could extinguish at any moment. Suddenly, from deep within the fog, she heard it again, a low, haunting laughter that sent shivers racing down her spine. It felt familiar, twisting something inside her as if it was echoing in her own mind. Anger flared in her chest, battling fear. "Show yourself!" she yelled, a mixture of defiance and terror spilling from her lips. The laughter stopped, and so did her heart. Silence enveloped her, pregnant with the weight of unseen eyes watching. She could feel the shadows converging, pressing in from all sides, thick as smoke and heavy with malice. As she stood trembling, she heard a soft voice, barely recognizable, slicing through the air. "Mommy, help!" It was Danny's voice, a fragile plea that sliced through her heart like a knife. Claire jolted, instinct driving her back. "Danny! Closer, come closer!" the voice whispered again, its tone syrupy and thick, dripping with a sinister sweetness. Ignoring the dread pooling in her stomach, she surged forward. "Where are you?" The whispers danced on the edges of her sanity, weaving tales of despair and confusion. Instead of clarity, they led her deeper, pulling her into a vortex of haunting echoes. Every step drew her further from the lamppost, the comforting light fading, leaving her in an abyss of cold, swirling shadows. Suddenly, the mist parted, revealing a dark alley she had never noticed before, hidden in the folds of the fog. The weight of an unnameable pressure settled on her shoulders. She took a deep breath, then forced herself to step inside, swallowing down her fear. There, at the end, a faint glow flickered, an old streetlight trembling like a dying star. As she inched closer, the whispers turned frenzied, rising around her until they clashed violently in her ears. Join us, join us!" It had shifted from Danny's helpless call to something insidious. She felt her grip on reality slipping, the line between her reality and the shadows blurring. "What do you want?" Claire's voice trembled, making her sound smaller than she felt. The shadows flickered, shifting like writhing snakes, hungry and waiting. Within their folds, she could almost make out cackling faces, twisted and contorted, a horrifying breed of lost souls. The glow from the streetlight intensified, illuminating a small figure hunched beneath its sickly yellow hue. "Mommy!" It was Danny, but he looked different, pale and stretched, as though the darkness had taken a piece of him away. The shadows curled around him, echoing the laughter that seeped into her very core. "No! Danny!" Claire raced forward, arms outstretched. "I'm here!" As she reached for him, the laughter crescendoed, and the shadows surged in, crashing against her. Claire felt their coldness wrapping around her limbs, pulling her into their depths. "Help me, Mommy!" Danny's voice twisted into a shriek, reverberating in the dark. With one last effort, Claire fought against the clawing shadows, a scream of pure anguish escaping her lips as she lunged forward, her mind racing with desperation. But just before she could reach her son, the darkness ripped him away, dragging him back into the void. Claire was left screaming, alone in a swirl of madness, the mist closing around her again. The echo of his laughter lingered for a moment longer, filling her with dread. In that moment of despair, as the shadows converged, Claire understood this wasn't just a curse on Waverly, it was an insatiable hunger, and she had become part of it. As night crushed the light into oblivion, she knew she had to find a way to break its grip. But time was fleeting, and the questions loomed in the darkness. How could she rescue Danny? What price would she have to pay to escape this nightmare? What creatures were hidden in the fog, waiting to claim their next victim? Claire's heart raced as the shadows closed in, each pulse like a timed bomb ready to detonate. She felt the cold tendrils wrapping around her ankles, dragging her toward the abyss. Panic surged anew with every heartbeat. "Danny!" She called again, her voice raw and desperate, but it felt swallowed by the dark, like a moth fluttering helplessly into a flame. The alley started to twist and bend, a hellish corridor of gloom. The mist thickened, almost drowning her in its oppressive weight. Shadows played tricks on her eyes. Faces emerged, brief glimpses that twisted and faded, grinning at her, their mouths stretched in maniacal laughter that rang louder than the thundering of her heart. Then, faintly, she heard the call again. "Mommy, help!" It echoed, a taunt that pinched her stomach. The deeper she pulled herself into the shadows, the clearer it grew. It shouldn't have, but that voice anchored her. She stumbled forward. "Danny! Please!" But the whispers started up again, swirling around her in a cacophony. Join us, join us." Their sing-song tones were laced with a promise that both thrilled and terrified her. Her surroundings began to dim, every flicker of light pulling away, stealing away hope like a thief in the night. What was happening? She could no longer tell if she was hallucinating or truly seeing. The blurry shapes in the fog now morphed into nightmares. One by one, they revealed themselves, lost souls, caught in the web of Waverly's curse. Their faces were a grotesque mirror to Danny's as they reached out, almost pleading, but more so demanding. "No!" Her mind screamed. She blinked hard, but the visions held fast. They wore expressions of longing and pain, like children abandoned. "You're not him!" she cried, shaking her head violently. "Get away!" The laughter that filled the air twisted into a dark symphony of despair. It rattled her bones, filled her ears, and surged through her thoughts as if the shadows were mocking the very essence of her being. Then out of the chaos, one shadow stepped forth, grander than the others, radiating a sickly glow that made her skin crawl. "Not him but him," it hissed, a voice dripping with malice, yet shrouded as if it bore secrets only it could unlock. What does a mother sacrifice to save her child? Time teetered on the edge. Claire's mind raced. What was the price? The question lingered, a poison curling in her thoughts. "I'll give anything. Just tell me." "Anything," it echoed back, laughter laced with sinister glee. Shadows twisted into shapes that seemed to reach for her, forming a vortex of despair. Just then, something shifted in the mist. At the center of it all, she spotted a glimmer of light pushing through the thick fog. Hope flickered, igniting a fire inside her. Danny? But as quickly as it emerged, it dimmed. "No! I need to." The shadows lunged, clawing and scraping, their insistence crushing her resolve. Claire's breath hitched. This was the moment, the decision echoing louder than the dark. Before she could second-guess herself, she sprinted toward the light, battling against the encroaching shadows that threatened to swallow her whole. Fear surged, each sprinting step feeling like a gamble against fate itself. What if it was nothing? What if the shadows consumed her before she could reach the light? The moment hung suspended in time, adrenaline surging through her veins as she propelled herself forward. The mist thickened around her, stinging her eyes, but the light pulsed with urgency. "Danny! I'm coming!" she gasped, willing herself to push through. But what awaited her in the glow? Something dark? Something beautiful? The shadows screamed, furious at her defiance. "You cannot run. You belong to us." But she pressed on, heart pounding, driven by love and horror intertwined. What had she awakened? What might she uncover in the depths of the light that cut through the darkness? Would she find Danny, or face something far worse? Claire broke through the mist, the cold tendrils releasing their grip for a heartbeat, but the moment was fleeting. The light shimmered, pulsating like a heartbeat of its own. She stumbled forward, hope and terror intertwining into a single, desperate force. "Danny!" she cried again, louder, as if her voice could pierce through the veil of shadows that hung over her like a thick, wet blanket. The whispers grew more frantic, clawing at her mind, feeding on her fear. join us," they sang, a twisted lullaby meant to soothe her into submission. The light before her expanded, revealing a small circle where the fog refracted, revealing twisted outlines of what used to be a playground. Swings creaked eerily, and teeter-totters swayed with no wind. Above it all, a sunken moon cast an otherworldly glow, molding reality into something sinister. "Danny?" She stepped closer, trembling as the shadows loomed behind her, inching forward as if drawn by her hope. The laughter turned into a singular groan, a voice merging with the whispers around her. Would this be where she lost him forever? In the center of the light, she saw a figure, a boy, familiar and heart-wrenching in the dim illumination. "Mommy," he called, a voice both cherubic and warped. The illusion of innocence stood there, suspended between the light and shadow, flickering like a faulty bulb. "Danny!" Claire rushed forward, stretching her hands out, but as she did, the shadows surged, filling any gap she might have to escape. The whispers surged, spinning around her, the air thick with their dark promises. "Leave her be!" She screamed, recoiling at the sensation scraping against her skin. It was like 1,000 pinpricks at once, each puncturing her resolve. "Join us!" The shadows crackled in unison, their jagged forms harmonizing with the thickening mists. "You'll never see him again if you don't." Claire's heart raced. Could she take that risk? 1,000 hands clawed at her, urging her to accept that demon-esque bargain. Her mind reeled. Were they talking about Danny or something darker? "I want to join you," she shouted back defiantly, the words tasting bitter in her mouth. Taking a step back, she felt a searing pain spike through her left ankle as a shadow latched on, dragging her near the edge of the light. "Join us!" a chorus of lost children pleaded, their eyes glimmering with an otherworldly flicker, swirling with memories she didn't want to see. The faces morphed. Some looked like Danny yet felt utterly wrong. They were pleading for her to surrender, but she couldn't let them take her. "Danny!" she screamed, pulling against the shadow-esque grip. Her heart thrummed, with furied strength, she broke free, rising to her feet again. As desperation washed over her, she lunged into the center of the light. Here, time stopped. "Mommy!" The boy's face flickered, and something was off. It felt like a mask, a pale imitation. The weight of dread enveloped her. Still, the urge to reach for him was overpowering. "What do you want?" she cried, voice breaking, fear clawing at her resolve as she gazed at the glowing figure. It was no longer human, the light wrestled with the dark, and confusion twisted inside her. Then, in a sickly sweet tone, the voice returned, warped yet chillingly familiar. "What if, the price is not what you think?" Claire's breath quickened as dread filled every fiber of her being. If shadows were telling her to join them, it meant their game had just begun. And the stakes were far higher than she dared imagine. "Mommy!" the voice rang, echoing a truth Claire feared to acknowledge. Suddenly, the shadows lunged toward the light as if trying to reclaim what they once lost. The ground shook beneath her, the playground warped, morphing into a spectral nightmare. What had she awakened? What would it cost her to discover the truth? Hesitation turned to fear. Was Danny truly there, or was she about to open the door to something far worse, something that would leave her forever haunted? She stumbled back, heart racing, her pulse echoing in her ears. The child shimmered under the flickering light, morphing into something grotesque. Disbelief twisted in her gut. "Danny?" she managed, voice trembling. The playground twisted, darkness pooling around her feet. It crept closer, fingers of shadow writhing over the earth like snakes. Suddenly, a sharp, agonizing scream pierced the air, a sound that shouldn't exist in this place. Claire's body froze as it twisted inside her, a raw blade of fear splitting her resolve. The flickering boy, now a static silhouette, advanced toward her. "Why can't you see me?" he screamed. The plea turned into anger, the golden light dimming as shadows wrapped around her throat like an icy noose. "You left me." "No." Claire gasped, forcing herself to breathe against the weight of despair crushing her chest. "I didn't leave you." Shaking her head, disoriented, she took a step back. The darkness roared, swallowing the last flickers of light. "No!" she screamed once more, her voice rising above the chaos surrounding her. The air grew heavy with a kind of despair she had never felt, thick and suffocating. As she turned, glancing behind her, the whispers intensified. "Join us, join us." The shadows crawled towards her, teeth glimmering in the haze. Each whisper carried fragments of memories, unwelcome, haunting recollections. The faces blurred into a mass of sorrow and rage, each one echoed a story of abandonment. "Stay with us forever," they shrieked, laughter turning dark and twisted as they pulsed around her like a storm. "No!" Claire shouted through clenched teeth. But they weren't listening. The shadows reached out, brushing against her skin, cold and sharp like broken glass. Panic exploded within her, waking every survival instinct. She turned to run, but something snagged her sharp nails, icy tendrils intertwining with her very being. They tugged at her, pulling her toward the distorted scene, threatening to drown her in sorrow. But suddenly silence. The whispers faded like mist in the morning sun, and she felt the shadows recede, leaving her gasping for breath. The child remained, still flickering, sadness pooling in his hollow eyes. "Mommy, help me," her heart twisted. Was this truly Danny? Or was this yet another cruel trick, another layer of the dark deception encasing her? Desperation clawed at her throat. She couldn't let him fall again. "Then tell me what to do," she cried. "How do I help you?" He pointed to a dark corner of the playground, where the shadows writhed like nightmarish tendrils. There his voice echoed, wavering with a strange energy. "You must find it to set me free." "Define it." But before she could voice her questions, the shadows surged, more violent than before, threatening to swallow her whole. "Find the truth and set us free." The boy's voice rang clear, and with that, he started to fade. The playground distorted, warping like a reflection in disturbed water, and her hope began to dissolve. She sprinted toward the darkness at the edge of the light, heart pounding furiously. Each step felt like dragging through thick mud as her mind raced. What lies waited there? What would be the cost of digging deeper? As she reached the brink, doubt clawed at her throat. What more could be hidden in the shadows? The ground quaked under the weight of her thoughts, and a voice within whispered secrets laced with dread. "Will you pay the price?" Claire stood at the precipice, heart hammering, the light behind flickering as the shadows beckoned with cruel hands. What hidden horror waited in the darkness? Would its revelation bring salvation or seal her fate forever? Claire hesitated, her breath hitching in her throat as the shadows loomed larger, darker. A pull, an urge to retreat, thrummed deep within her. But Danny's flickering image was still there, haunting her, his pleading eyes urging her forward. With a shuddering resolve, she stepped into the darkness. Coldness enveloped her like a shroud, and for a moment, her vision narrowed to a tunnel, obscured by the swirling shadows. The whispers returned, louder now, clawing at her sanity. Come find the truth." Suddenly, she was thrust into a vast void, where light wouldn't dare enter. The air grew stale, thick with despair. Not just confusion this time, but a core, visceral dread that seeped into her bones. The shadows coalesced, shaping into grotesque forms that danced and twisted in mockery of the child she once knew. Each step deeper felt like stepping through ice water, chills shooting up her spine as she strained against the weight of fear pressing down on her. "What is the truth?" she shouted into the oppressive dark, her voice quaking with challenges meant for both the darkness and herself. The shadows rippled, and a figure emerged, an old woman with eyes like polished stone, unblinking and heavy with the weight of time. "You seek what cannot be found," she rasped, her voice a razor dragging through silt. "The truth comes with a price, sweet child." "What is it?" Claire's voice was firm, cutting through the despair like a blade. "What do you want from me?" "Memory. Pure, painful memory," the figure hissed. "Your heart holds what must be unearthed. Only then will the boy be free." With a jolt, Claire felt a surge of memories, snippets of laughter, moments of joy, but also sharp scenes of abandonment, of decisions made in despair. She saw her own face in the mirror of time, reflecting guilt tightly wound with the threads of her life. "Danny," she whispered, hot tears welling up. I can't relive that." "Relive it you must." The shadows surged like a tidal wave, engulfing her. Suddenly, visions engulfed her, her son giggling as he played, their afternoons at the park turned to shattered days, his fear swallowed by her choices. Familiar cries, nightmarish faces she'd failed to protect, washed over her. The laughter twisted into screams, echoes of what she'd lost crashing over her in suffocating waves. No. I can't, please. And then she saw it, a young girl alone on a swing, eyes vacant, an empty husk waiting for the life that had been stolen. Mommy. Come swing with me. It shattered her, the truth of her neglect splintering her heart. The shadows recoiled slightly, as if mirroring her internal struggle. Feel it, the old woman croaked. Face the burden of your truth. And she did. Claire closed her eyes, letting the memories seep through the cracks of her fortitude. Sobs shook her, racking her frame as finally, she began to remember every little moment that brought her to this hell. But as her agony gathered strength, the darkness seemed to pulse and hum, awakening something ancient and terrible. Will you face the price? Came the whisper, dripping with malice, slithering into her ears. The ground beneath her trembled, she felt the weight of countless lost souls pressing in a desperate, haunting chorus. They reached for her, grasping urges to pull her under, but Claire remained steadfast, driven by the flickers of hope for her son. I will, she declared, a fierce resolution igniting within her. I will face whatever comes for Danny. The shadows shrieked, fading into an otherworldly whimper, but a terrible rush of wind and darkness enveloped Claire, leaving only the echo of her own voice. Set him free in an instant. Everything shifted, clouds of shadow swirling violently around her as the ground cracked open beneath her feet. What lay below? A deeper terror awaited. Would she fully uncover the secrets buried in her heart, or would the truth consume her entirely? Claire felt the ground give way, a sudden drop that twisted her stomach into knots. She fell, swallowed by darkness, racing downward into an abyss of swirling, rancid air. Panic poured over her like ice water, freezing her veins as she braced for the impact. But there was none. Instead, she landed softly, a blanket of whispers soaking into her skin as she lay there, unmoving. The voices swirled around her, wrapping her soul tighter. Each nickname, each harsh word hurled across her past replayed as if in a sick, unending loop. Murderer. Abandoner. Coward. Their echoes sank deep within her, filling her with shame as she pulled herself upright. What now? She croaked, voicing the thought trapped in her chest. What do you want from me? The shadows danced just out of reach, whispering sweetly and seductively, luring her deeper into the dark. They beckoned her, promising answers, but every instinct screamed to flee. Face your past, a voice hissed, threading through the shadows, a spine-chilling promise cloaked in darkness. Only then can you save him. Not again. She wrapped her arms around herself, desperate for comfort, but found only the bitter chill of isolation closing in. Guilt and fear mingled in her mind, forming an unbearable weight that pressed her down. With quaking steps, she navigated the chaotic blackness, catching glimpses of twisted shapes that looked like her, each one a memory, a moment she couldn't escape. A flickering image of Danny's bright smile floated near, faded and distant, and it drew her like a moth to flame. Danny! She cried, lurching towards the echo of his laughter that danced just out of reach. But as she reached for him, the shadows morphed, a wall of darkness blocking her path. Face what you have done. The old woman appeared again, her cold eyes piercing into Claire's. Relive your shame, or forever be lost. Please, I can't. Not again. Claire's voice trembled, raw with despair. I thought I could save him. I thought you thought wrong. The old woman smiled, revealing teeth like shards of broken glass. Let the truth embrace you. The ground shuddered, and the air turned electric as Claire was thrust into another vision, her past unraveling violently before her. She saw herself in the moments of neglect, choices that turned her back on her child. Angry shouts echoed from the memory of Danny's face, a child left alone in the dark while his mother chased escape. Mommy! Don't go! The child's voice pierced her heart like a dagger. Claire dropped to her knees, hands tangling in her hair as pain sizzled through her. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. The words poured out, a desperate plea into the suffocating void, but the darkness laughed, taunting her. Apologies aren't enough. You must suffer. Dark liquid rushed at her from the edges, tendrils of shadow coiling around her legs, climbing up her body, thrumming with malevolence. Each tendril seemed an extension of her own guilt, reminding her of what she'd abandoned. Face it. The old woman shouted, the shadows thickening in response to Claire's terror, tightening like a noose. The whispers morphed into a cacophony of voices, each screaming her failures, drowning her in despair. I can't, and then, just as suddenly, silence fell. The oppressive weight lifted slightly, allowing her a spark of clarity. I have to remember, she breathed, trembling, with renewed determination. She pushed through the unrelenting shadows, reaching back into the corners of her mind, peeling layers of pain away. But just as a revelation flickered to life, a sudden crash echoed through the dark, a shattering wave of light that surged through the shadows, illuminating something terrifying lurking just beyond. What was that? Claire's heart raced. It felt as if the walls of this dark world were crumbling around her. A new energy was rising, dark and chaotic. A presence that knew her fears intimately, suddenly stepping into the light. Was it a friend or an enemy? Would Claire unravel the final threads of her past, or would this being consume her entirely? The answers loomed just out of grasp, waiting for her to make her next move. Claire's breath quickened as the light pulsed ominously, illuminating a figure half-formed in shadows. The energy crackled, raising the hair on her arms. She could barely see the figure's face, but it felt unbearably familiar, like a ghost from a long-forgotten memory. Dark, twisted laughter echoed in the chamber, sending a shiver down her spine. Who are you? She choked out, her voice barely above a whisper. The figure stepped closer, revealing piercing eyes that glinted with malice. It matched her gaze, her own reflection twisted in hatred. You should know me well, Claire, it hissed, each word laced with venom. All those years of running, and you thought you could escape? Confusion and fear clashed within her, tightening her chest. No, you're not me, she gasped, backing away. But the shadows surged forward as if they were alive, pushing her back to the edge of her dark memories. The figure smirked, gliding closer, a palpable malevolence radiating from them. You can't deny the truth forever. I am every whispered accusation, every moment you turned away. I am the monster you created, and I will reclaim what you stole. The taunting tone sent waves of despair crashing over her. Danny, I never meant for any of this. I loved him. The words tumbled out like a half-formed plea, desperation clawing at her throat. Love? Is that what you call it? The figure's laughter exploded around her, the echoes blending with her own guilt-ridden thoughts. You loved only your freedom, Claire. And look where that freedom led. Suddenly, images flooded her mind, Danny alone in their darkened living room playing with shadows, waiting for her to return. Each scene struck her heart like a hammer, deepening the chasm of regret. Stop! She screamed, covering her ears, but the memories still surged, relentless and damning. Each choice, a step deeper into the abyss. You left him behind, remember? The figure's voice shifted, simmering with raw mockery. While you danced with your demons, he cried for you. A wave of cold washed over Claire, filling her lungs with despair. I have to face it, she whispered, each syllable brittle and hesitant. The weight of her guilt felt like chains anchoring her in place, pulling her under waves of anguish while the shadows threatened to swallow her whole. Yes. Embrace it. Only then can you truly suffer, the figure taunted, its form flickering like a flame, taunting her to give in to the darkness. The shadows coiled tighter around her, the heat of rage mixing with icy despair, wrapping her in a suffocating embrace. Claire's heart pounded harder, thoughts racing at lightning speed. What do I do? She choked out, struggling against the dark tendrils that tightened like a vice around her. She could hear angry voices anew her own. You can't run. You can't hide. Face me. The figure ordered, stepping into the bright ripples of light that momentarily broke the darkness. It was no longer just a twisted version of her, it was her shame incarnate, compelling her to acknowledge what she tried so hard to bury. As the shadows withdrew slightly, revealing parts of her past, dark memories surged forward, a cacophony of choices and their prices, each one a reminder of her failures. Claire felt her resolve harden amidst the tide of guilt. No more, she whispered defiantly, each word a spark against the darkness. Let us see if you can withstand the truth, the figure replied, voice dripping with wicked anticipation. And suddenly, with a crackle, the figure lunged forward. Claire staggered back, her heart racing. Would she remain lost in her past, or could she turn the tide? Seizing every ounce of courage, she prepared to confront the darkness head-on, but the shadows surged again, grasping for her, wanting to pull her back into the depths. Just as the tendrils began to overwhelm her, she glimpsed a flicker of hope on the horizon, a light fighting through the thick veil of despair. Could it be the pathway to Danny? Before she could move towards it, the darkness howled in fury, a violent swirl around her. Come to me. It shrieked, the sound piercing her very soul, resonating with her deepest fears. In that moment, with everything at stake, Claire had a choice. Would she embrace the truth and break free, or remain chained by her regrets? The ground trembled beneath her as she prepared to make her stand. But just as she stepped toward the light, the shadows lunged for her like a wild beast, teeth bared and ready to consume. Who would emerge victorious, the light of her redemption or the darkness of her fears? Time twisted and stretched, and Claire felt the very foundation of her existence begin to shift beneath her. The climax loomed just ahead. Claire's breath quickened, heart pounding like a war drum as the shadows swirled around her, a tempest of despair seeking to consume her whole. She felt the whisper of her past clawing at her, the chorus of mistakes echoing in her ears. You will be lost forever. No! She shouted, a surge of defiance coursing through her. I want to let you take me. The ground trembled beneath her, shaking with the pulse of lingering fears and guilt. She caught sight of a flicker of light just beyond the roiling mass of darkness, a hope that shone like a beacon through the storm. Mommy helped, the voice wrapped around her, sweet and familiar, drawing her toward the flicker. It was Danny's voice, pulling her forth like a siren. I'm coming, Danny. She cried, launching herself toward the glow, shoving aside the icy fingers of despair. The shadows writhed and twisted, trying to wrap around her once more, but she fought against them. Each step was a battle, each inch gained was hard-won. Join us, they hissed, breath hot against her skin, you'll never escape. But Claire understood now. She had spent too long running, hiding from the truth that lay buried deep within her. She tripped over her own fears, but kept climbing back to her feet, determined, indomitable. When she reached the core of the light, she spun to face the malignant figure that mirrored her shame. I see you. She shouted, the words spilling out like a cleansing flood. You will not control me. The figure paused, momentarily flickering. You dare defy me? It hissed, eyes glinting with fury. You'll regret this. No. Claire roared, forcing her own self-doubt down. You're a part of me, but you don't define me. The light surged brighter in response, a pulse of raw energy that felt alive. The shadows recoiled, battered by the radiance. This is my truth. Claire screamed, drawing on every memory of joy she shared with Danny, every laugh, every playful shout. She reached into the depths of her heart to collect all the love she had for him. I forgive myself for all the mistakes, but I won't lose him again. As she summoned all of that love, the shadows shrieked and twisted, trying to pull her back into the darkness. But Claire expanded the light around her, letting it explode like fireworks, illuminating every nook of despair. Danny! She called, and in that instant, the shadows recoiled. I'm here. I'll always be here. The darkness cracked, splitting open as the shadows howled their final curses. The energy radiated outward, and right in its center stood Danny, real, whole, and unaffected by the torment surrounding him. "Mommy." His face lit up with relief, and Claire felt her heart soar at the sight. Tears streamed down her face as she stumbled forward, heart racing. "Danny. I'm so sorry. I'm here." As they reached each other, the darkness dissolved like mist beneath the sun. The playground became vibrant, colors spilling into view, warmth flooding into every empty corner. The laughter of children echoed back, reclaiming the space once dominated by anguish. Danny gripped her tight, their moments suspended in the air, a joy reborn, a bond unbroken. "I thought I lost you," Claire breathed, her voice laced with relief and love. "You didn't leave me, Mommy. I knew you'd come." Reality shifted, embracing them in warmth. No longer encased in shadows, they stood back in Waverly, fog lifting to reveal the dawn. The mental asylum loomed far in the distance, its dark presence no longer ominous, but now a relic of the past they had conquered together. "Let us go home," she said, taking his tiny hand in hers, and as they turned toward the gas station, the sun broke over the horizon, casting golden rays across the town. The curse that had haunted Waverly fell silent, a specter of the past, retreating with the light of a new dawn. Together, Claire and Danny stepped into the vibrant morning, the weight of burdens lifted. They left behind the shadows, stepping into a future unmarked by fear. "Let us ride our bikes to the park," Danny exclaimed, joy bubbling over, and Claire laughed, a sound of pure relief. "Let us do it together." As they sped off into the brightness ahead, Claire felt free for the first time in ages. The town of Waverly was healing, and so were they. That was the moment to embrace joy, to reclaim life and love. As the camera pans away from the gas station and the joyful laughter fills the air, remember this: you need to subscribe now to never miss a moment like this again. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and spread the love. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about their journey. And for the love of all that's good, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this life-affirming conclusion. Don't wait even one more second, act now.